there are oftentimes relationships where both people are the toxic parties, but sometimes there could be one healthy person and one toxic person in the healthy relationship. And the one toxic person makes the relationship as a whole toxic. And so it might not be that the person is untrustworthy, but because you have undealt with unhealth that lead you to believing that they're untrustworthy, even though they are.
Which is toxic. Do you think everyone's like a little bit toxic?
I think that we all have a bit of toxic in us. I think that everyone needs to work hard at becoming less toxic. Like I think there are things that we can do to almost like subvert our toxicity. So like counseling, ensuring that we have relationships that will point out our toxicity, being self-aware. So I would say that I've become less toxic over the last 10 years, but it's taken a lot of work.
Yeah.
How about you? Would you say you're toxic?
Yeah, I would say I'm toxic.
I would agree.
In some ways.
I would agree.
I try to work on it.
I strongly agree.
And because everyone's a little bit toxic, that means that there's a lot of toxic relationships.
Yeah. And I think that when someone, like I'd say the opposite of toxic is health. So if someone is healthy, it means that the percentage of health in their heart and mind overcomes or overwhelms the percentage of unhealth.
Yeah.
Like as a framework, I would say that almost like people have a certain amount of pieces. Like if we're looking at a pizza and it's like, say there's 10 slices in that pizza.
Yeah.
Stick with me.
I'm with you.
10 slices in that pizza. And if 9 of those slices are healthy and 1 is toxic, you're a healthy person. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I just feel like if you ate a pizza and one piece had food poisoning, you'd still have food poisoning. That's why I looked a little confused.
I think every analogy fails at a certain point. Anyways, let's get rid of those analogies. We want to talk today about toxicity and why, like how someone can identify the fact that they're in a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
In a toxic relationship. And I think we should just get into it. There's 4 ways that we think that someone can tell that they're in a toxic relationship. And I would say the first one is there's symptoms of distrust.
Symptoms of distrust. So those would be things like...
feeling the need to look through the person's phone with the fear of finding something. So like it's different than we just went on a nice date to the aquarium or to the zoo and a lot of the pictures are on your phone, so I'm looking through your phone. Like that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about like I feel the need to consistently check through my significant other's phone because I don't fully trust their integrity or something in me
cannot trust someone
because maybe I've had toxic relationships in the past or a family member, like a parent or a sibling was really untrustworthy. And because of that, and the reason it's not just the other person, the reason you have to like almost say, is it you or is it me? Is because there are oftentimes relationships where both people are the toxic parties. But sometimes there could be one healthy person in the relationship and one toxic person in the healthy relationship. And the one toxic person makes the relationship as a whole toxic. And so it might not be that the person is untrustworthy, but because you have undealt with unhealth that lead you to believing that they're untrustworthy, even though they are.
Which is toxic.
Yeah.
Another sign of distrust that I think I've seen before is when people always need to know where their significant other is or what they're doing. Like if they haven't heard from them in like an hour or 2, that they start to freak out, they start to get angry. And the reality is if you're in like a healthy, trusting relationship, you shouldn't be super worried if you don't know exactly where that person is and what they're doing.
Or you're always tracking their location, for example. If you have your location shared and you're tracking not out of curiosity, but out of paranoia.
Yeah. or control or
so
something.
you're like, I don't fully trust that this person is where they say they're going to be. Mm-hmm. And they've given me no reason to think that. Or they have given you reason to think that.
Yeah.
Both of those things can make for a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
What's point number 2?
Okay, the second sign that you might be in a toxic relationship is if you don't feel better after hanging out with them, you actually feel worse about yourself, about your life. And I think that's just like not what a relationship's supposed to be. A relationship's supposed to be something that brings you joy and happiness. And of course, relationships can be hard, but if your overall feeling is this like you're feeling worse after being with them, I think that's something to pay attention to.
Yeah, if you feel more insecure, less confident, less joyful for prolonged periods. So I know that there's sometimes periods of tension in relationships where it's like over a period of 3 weeks, there's a lot of arguing or debating or going back and forth. We're not talking about that.
Yeah.
We're talking about your net feeling when you spend time with this person is one that is negative, that is more self-conscious, that is more anxious, and less confident.
Yeah, exactly. So pay attention to that if you feel that.
I think similar to point number 2, point number 3 is when you feel more anxious and less at peace when you're around the person.
And this, like, I feel like the anxious word can also be translated to nervousness. Like, I feel like it's spoken a lot about. I'm like, oh, I'm so nervous around them. Like, it's a good thing. And of course, when you first meet someone, there's going to be nerves, there's going to be butterflies. But if you're like never feeling at rest or feeling like yourself when you're with that person, then that's a red flag, I would say. Like, if you're always feeling like you're paying attention to how you sound to them or how you look, and you're just kind of like, there's this anxiety around being around them, then that's different than if you're able to truly be yourself and like not care what they think and stuff like that.
Yeah, if you're always feeling as if you're walking on eggshells around the person, or you have to always have your shirt buttoned up and things all tidy around them, or else they'll respond negatively or you will feel more anxious because of that, it's important to pay attention to. Because again, like a previous point, it could point to unhealth in the person that you're with, in the relationship at large, or it could point to unhealth in you as well.
And the fourth sign is that you can't be honest with others in your life about the relationship. So this could look like always trying to justify the relationship. Like
oh, he's not always like that.
He's a really great guy.
Yeah.
Like, I just see a softer side of him or whatever.
You guys wouldn't get it.
Yeah. And I think if you find yourself doing that a lot and you find yourself not being able to be honest with other people about certain things about your relationship, then that's something to see as a red flag. I think that, like, of course there's aspects of your relationship you're not trying to share with everybody else. And those sometimes are meant to keep private, but it's almost like when you know, you know. When you know that you're part of you is trying to hide parts of the relationship from other people, or you're like, oh, I wish they didn't see that because now they're going to think he's like this. It's like, well, maybe he's just like that. Maybe he just is toxic and people are seeing it.
And I think that sometimes I see this manifested in people not being honest about the person's like quirks or weaknesses. So I think that sometimes people's minds go straight to like abusive tendencies. But I think that sometimes this is manifested in weaknesses or things that you would have previously seen as a yellow flag that you're kind of putting under the rug in the name of sustaining the relationship.
Yeah.
But I think you need to be mindful of that, because some of those like flags that are going off in your head, whether it be yellow, red, or orange, are very much so signals to your mind and to your heart that you should be paying attention to those things. So those are our 4 key indicators for how you can determine whether you're in a toxic relationship. I would love to see more input. So if you feel like you have another sign, or you've been in a relationship or seen a relationship secondhand that was toxic, I would love to see you drop that below in the comments, because we do believe that the best conversation is the one that's happening in the comments, not necessarily the one that's happening here.
Yeah, so we'd love to hear part of your story, and that part of your story could help so many people so many other people identify if they're in a toxic relationship or if they need to maybe take a second look at their relationship and where they're at.
And if you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe and share this conversation if you think it'd be of help to someone.
We'll talk to you next week.